All right, getting back into program or be programmed, Douglas Rushkoff. We just finished talking about chapter 2, so it's time to talk about chapter 3. Chapter 3 is titled Choice. You may always choose none of the above. Here I just want to pause for a second and just give consideration, right? This is program or be programmed. 10 commands for a digital age is the full title here. So as a reminder of the different commands or chapters that we're getting into here, chapter 1 was about time. Do not be always on. Chapter 2 was about place with the call to live in person. Now we have chapter 3, choice. You may always choose none of the above. And hopefully in this video I'll be able to get up to where I'm currently at, which is through chapter 6. But chapter 4 is complexity. You are never completely right. Chapter 5 is scale. One size does not fit all. And chapter 6, identity. Be yourself. We'll obviously get into each of those things, but I do think that Rushkoff has really nicely identified these distinct characteristics, right? They're tied to the human experience, and all of them are pain points that I've personally expressed. And so just in the spirit of better organizing thoughts and creating more cohesive explanations for my thoughts or rationale behind my thoughts, this is a good consideration. We'll obviously get into the rest of the chapters and their titles as well, but calling that out right now. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention before getting into chapter 3 is something that I keep coming back to as I'm reading, which is just, I am really appreciating the way that he's delivering this message. I think I have a tendency to be pretty negative and judgmental or condescending at times when I'm talking about some of the same stuff. But he takes a more optimistic approach. He's coming from a place of genuinely trying to get everyone to be able to understand this. And so I think even these ideas, which I think a lot of people might miss just how profound the roots of his support are, he's making it accessible, right? And so whether you're an intellectual, you can appreciate where he's deriving these ideas from. They're rooted in really intellectual thoughts, but he's presenting it in a way that is actually useful, especially in this context, which is, we're identifying this problem that is at a sort of a societal level. You need to convince the society to make some adjustments to understand why it's an issue. So I like it. I like his delivery. I'm just kind of considering that as I'm going through as well. So chapter 3, choice. In the digital realm, everything is made into a choice. The medium is biased toward the discrete. This often leaves out things we have not chosen to notice or record and forces choices when none need to be made. So he begins with this discussion between analog records and CDs. And just to give my recap here, the difference is notable and just serves as a perfect example of what we're talking about here. It's probably something I'll use in the future. And as a quick aside, is another instance of a synchronicity or a connecting point to other big thoughts that I've explored. In this case, it's subliminal acoustic manipulation, or basically just sound theory in general. But he gets into how sound has influential abilities and how that kind of works. So the main difference is that the record is more of an artifact of a real event that happened at a particular time and place. So the musician or the singer plays or sings while a needle cuts grooves into a wax disc. The sound vibrates the needle, which creates this physical record of the noise that can be turned into a mold and then can be copied. So when somebody else then plays a needle through the copied version, the original sound emerges. It's just a physical event, an impression left in matter. It's physical, it's tied, and it's not only tied to a real event, but the experience of the record is also physical too. And the record captures all of the sound at that moment in time. But a CD is different. It's not a physical artifact, but a symbolic representation. It's more like text than it is like sound. A computer is programmed to measure various parameters of the sound coming from a musician's instrument. The computer assigns numerical values, many times a second, to the sound in an effort to represent it mathematically. Once the numerical or digital equivalent of the recording is quantified, it can be transferred to another computer, which then synthesizes the music from scratch based on those numbers. So the difference here, and we get into what's going on here, but critical here is in the digital recording, only the dimensions of the sound that can be measured and represented in numbers are taken into account. Any dimensions that the recording engineers haven't taken into consideration are lost. They're simply not measured. They're not written down or stored, and they can't be reproduced. It's not as if they can be rediscovered later on with some upgraded playback device. They're just gone. So the record, on the other hand, it's just capturing all of the sound. So there's no filtering taking place. So it's interesting, and I know that it can seem like what's the big deal? And actually that's what he says. Given how convincingly real a digital recording can seem, especially in comparison with a scratchy record, this loss may seem trivial. Any losses in the CD version or the digital version. After all, if we can't hear it, how important could it be? And most people have decided it's not that important at all. But I promise you, it is important. And there's now actual research and some evidence to support this. Early tests of analog recordings compared to digital ones revealed that music played back on a CD format had much less of a positive impact on depressed patients than the same recording played back on a record. Other tests showed that digitally recorded sound moved the air in a room significantly differently than analog recordings played through the same speakers. The bodies in that room would presumably also experience that difference, even if we humans can't immediately put a name or metric on exactly what that difference is. So it's not that the digital recording is not good enough, because again, perceptively, we can't really tell the difference in the sound, but it's just fundamentally different, and the phenomenon that you experience is different with analog. Hopefully I'm capturing the distinction there and why it's potentially significant. The digital realm is biased toward choice because everything must be expressed in the terms of a discrete yes or no symbolic language. This in turn often forces choices on humans operating within the digital sphere. We must come to recognize the increased number of choices in our lives as largely a side effect of the digital. We always have the choice of making no choice at all. And again, this makes a lot of sense. And because just think about all of the different ways that this comes into play. Computers obviously operate in binary, ones and zeros, which creates true or false dynamics. That's structurally the foundation of computers is 1 or 0. It has to be one or the other. Quantum computing is sort of challenging this, but still the point is that the way that we've engaged with this technology has been in this 1-0 dynamic. And that creates a lot of choices to be made, both as a consumer of these mediums, but also, or of this media, but also back-end stuff. So the choices that the programmer makes fundamentally changes the way that consumer or the individual using that program experiences that stuff. One of the things that I really liked about this, or a quote, a piece of this argument that I liked: choice stops us. It requires that we make a decision in order to move on. Choice means selecting one option while letting all the others go. Imagine having to choose your college major before taking a single course. Each option passed over is an opportunity cost, both real and imagined. The more choices we make, or are forced to make, the more we believe our expectations will be met. We believe that if we have the choice, that simply by having choice, we are then somehow more in control of outcomes. And so therefore we believe that we have an expectation that the expected result will be met. But in actual experience, our pursuit of choice has the effect of making us less engaged, more obsessive, less free, and more controlled. And forced choice is no choice at all. Whether for a hostage forced to choose which of her children can survive, or a social network user forced to tell the world whether she is married or single. Digital technology's bias toward forced choices dovetails all too neatly with our roles as consumers, reinforcing this notion of choice as somehow liberating while turning our interactive lives into fodder for consumer research. Websites and programs become laboratories where our keystrokes and mouse clicks are measured and compared, our every choice registered for its ability to predict and influence the next choice. And again, as someone in the advertising world, I can't overstate the importance of what he's saying right there. Most people just don't know. So it's not like there's not a way you wouldn't know unless you were an expert in this area. But the way everything is designed is really designed for maintaining attention, and they are collecting data points on everything that you do. As an advertiser, when we are talking to partners about audiences, the level of detail that they can get into in their audiences, and the reason why they can have such targeted audiences is because they are collecting an unimaginable amount of data on everything that you're doing. How much time you hovered and read a certain section, right? How much time it takes you to scroll, the clicks, right? All of those are being measured, and it's all for consumer research, just so that they can predict what you're likely to do and sell that information to people who want to exploit that. So the more we accept each approximation as accurate, the more we reinforce these techniques from our machines and their programmers, whether it's an online bookstore suggesting books based on previous selections and those of thousands of other consumers with similar choice histories, or a consumer research firm using kids' social networking behaviors to predict which ones will someday self-identify as gay. Yes, they can do that now. Yes, I can confirm that also. Choice is less about giving people what they want than getting them to take what the choice giver has to sell. Think about that. In this context, choice is less about giving people what they want than it is about getting them to take what the choice giver has to sell. You're provided with a limited choice, a false choice. You're presented this stuff as if it's a choice, but really it's selected by a person who wants to sell you something. Meanwhile, the more we learn to conform to the available choices, the more predictable and machine-like we become ourselves. We train ourselves to stay between the lines, like an image dragged onto a Snap 2 grid. Likewise, through our series of choices about the news we read, feeds to which we subscribe, and websites we visit, we create a choice filter around ourselves. Friends and feeds we may have chosen arbitrarily or because we were forced to in the past soon become the markers through which our programs and search engines choose what to show us next. And then he explains that an alternative to these forced choices has been a solution like tagging. And so in tagging posts and a place like, I don't know, Reddit would maybe is adjacent, but it's also what the hashtags kind of did, tagging content. Substack does this. Like you can tag your topics, and so you can align more with the tags, right? It's a way to sort of counteract this false choice. Last piece there, I guess. We are always free to withhold choice, resist categorization, or even go for something not on the list of available options. You may always choose none of the above. Withholding choice is not death. Quite on the contrary, it is one of the few things distinguishing life from its digital imitators. This is something that I really advocate for. And a lot of times in life right now, people are going to tell you, you just kind of have to do things. You have to be online. You have to do certain things. You don't have an Amazon account? Like, you don't subscribe to so-and-so? You have the choice not to do it. And it is extremely liberating, and it gives you a sense of control and autonomy back to your life. And it's not about just doing it just to do it. It's about just being selective about what you want to choose to consume.